Hey everybody, it's Ben, and I'm back once again with another video for you guys. Today I'm going to be talking about Captain America, the Winter Soldier Ultimate Collection. This collects the first 9 issues and then issues 11 through 14 of Volume 5 of the Captain America series, which was started back in 2005 and ran through until 2011. Now the series is written by Ed Brubaker, with the artwork on this particular first volume being primarily done by Steve Epting and Michael Lark. And we also have some other artists on here, including Mike Perkins and John Paul Leon, and we also have Frank DeMata on the colouring. So this is the storyline that is credited with bringing Bucky Barnes back from the dead since his death in the 1940s. Now, if you're like me and you've seen the film of the Winter Soldier with obviously Chris Evans, Sebastian Shaw, Scarlett Johansson, etc. I would still highly recommend you check this out, because this is a really multifaceted story. On the one hand, it deals with Captain America as he is still a man at a time essentially, and he's dealing with still being within the modern world. He's suggested to it somewhat, but then at the same time he actually admits to Agent 13, aka Sharon Carter, his long-time love interest and obviously a friend and fellow SHIELD member, that when he dreams of being back in the Second World War, specifically during 1944. Now, the story actually started with the Red Skull actually buying armaments from a former member of the KGB by the name of Alexander Lukin. Now, he admittedly tries to get the Red Skull to give up the Cosmic Cube, which, if you know the Red Skull, he will not do that at all, because the Red Skull and the Cosmic Cube, within the confines of Marvel Comics, and in particular Captain America, they are almost sort of intrinsically linked, because it's a tool that he often uses to try to shape the world to his own vision, and obviously use it to exact his will upon the world. But he actually spies the Winter Soldier in a stasis pod, if you would, being kept seemingly on ice for the past probably 50 years, since the last time he was on an assignment, which was back in the mid-1950s. Now, Lucan even admits that he wouldn't sell the Winter Soldier to the Red Skull, because he's got plans for that particular asset, which come into play later on in the story. So the story, like I said, it's part Captain America Man at a Time, it's a part murder mystery, it's a spy thriller / espionage story, as well as being a really interesting and enthralling and really quite fascinating insight into the exploits of Captain America and Bucky during the Second World War, as well as obviously being a really interesting and a really quite engrossing character study as well for the character of Captain America. Now, the first couple of issues have Cap as an agent of SHIELD basically going around and basically battling against modern day terrorists, which are essentially they belong to rogue splinter groups, one of which is working on behalf of the Red Skull, and the other, which is AIM, which is Advanced Idea Mechanics. So we have that aspect of the story going on, but then seemingly at the end of the first issue, we have the Red Skull seemingly murdered by whereby of a bullet to the heart, a high-powered velocity round from a sniper rifle. So that's where the murder mystery aspect of the story comes in, and we seemingly have Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, Agent 13, Sharon Carter, and Nick Fury of SHIELD seemingly trying to figure out who killed the Red Skull, why they would want his Cosmic Cube, and ultimately what their end goal is for using the Cosmic Cube in the first place. Now, the story alternates between the modern day and flashbacks during the Second World War, which detail some of the exploits of not only Captain America and Bucky, but also Cap, Bucky and the Invaders, and also a joint task force, if you will, of Cap, Bucky, the Invaders, and a group of Russian soldiers or freedom fighters. Now, Ed Brubaker seemingly really subtly but also quite masterfully incorporates the overarching story of these first two story arcs, which is obviously the death of the Red Skull and the murder mystery as to who's behind it and why they want the Cosmic Cube, as well as the reveal who the Winter Soldier is, and obviously how this affects Cap right down to the very core of who he is as a human being and as, in terms of what he stands for as well. It's really, really well done. There's a lot of action. Well, there's a fair bit of action in the modern day sequences with Cap and Sharon battling against obviously the rogue terrorist groups, as well as trying to figure out who's behind the murder of the Red Skull and why they'd want the Cosmic Cube. But also there's a lot more action in the and also battle sequences as well, and obviously firefights and fisticuffs with Cap, Bucky, the Invaders, and the members of the Axis powers, or the Nazi party, or the Nazi soldiers that they come up against in the Second World War. I have to say, all of the artwork done by Steve Epting, Michael Lark, Mike Perkins, and John Paul Leon, as well as the colouring done by Frank D'Amata, is all absolutely fantastic, especially the modern day sequences and the flashbacks alternated between Steve Epting does the modern day stuff and Michael Lark does the flashbacks, which is all fantastic and really, really well done. So we also get treated to, like I said, not only some history and some flashbacks of Cap and Bucky's exploits during the Second World War. We also see them obviously come into contact with the Red Skull, and also Masterman, who is essentially the Nazi version of Superman, if you will, or their own super-soldier, as well as we also learn that although during the newsreels which come into play in the story later on, that Cap and Bucky were seemingly always battling the Axis powers and the Nazi forces in Germany and during the Second World War as a whole, what the members of the general public actually didn't know, and what actually Ed Brubaker actually expands on, was the fact that Bucky was not only a poster boy for obviously various things to get youngsters to obviously do certain things during the war effort, like for example, like recycling like old bottle caps, that kind of thing. But he was also a advanced infiltrator as well as a stealth assassin, which was really, really cool and really interesting, because he essentially, even Cap admits that, Bucky crosses the lines that I wouldn't normally cross unless I had to, because Bucky had essentially been trained by the same trainers that had trained Steve Rogers in hand-to-hand combat when he eventually went through the Super-Soldier Serum and subsequently became Captain America, and then obviously underwent the training in hand-to-hand combat where he became a really proficient hand-to-hand combat fighter. So that was really interesting, as well as the fact that, like I said, there's some other. The fight scenes in general are really, really well done. Some standouts obviously being the sequences during the flashbacks during the Second World War, as well as some really great fight scenes between Crossbones and Cap, as well as the ending fight scene between Cap and the Winter Soldier, which is the culmination of the Winter Soldier storyline. Now, like I said, what Ed Brubaker really manages again to masterfully incorporate is also a really interesting look into the history of Captain America, not only in terms of the ideal, but also the individuals that would pick up the mantle of Cap and Bucky subsequently afterwards, when both Steve Rogers and Bucky Barnes, or James Barnes, were seemingly killed in action back in the 1940s, when Bucky became stuck on an experimental German warcraft, when obviously Steve was, I would imagine, because of the force of the air that they were going through, seemingly lost his handling and seemingly went into the ocean and was obviously frozen then for 50 to 70 years before he was actually thawed out by the members of the Avengers. So that was really interesting, as well as obviously seeing the various individuals that would then become Captain America later on. And for somebody who... Captain America was always kind of one of those characters that I liked, but I could pretty much take or leave him, to be honest. I was never really that much into Captain America as a character until I started to read, obviously, Ed Brubaker's run on Cap, which is seemingly one of the, it's considered a seminal run, and it's considered one of the definitive runs on the character of Captain America pretty much ever, and especially even more so for the modern age as well. So that was all really interesting as well, getting the backstory on some of the individuals that would take up the mantle after Steve and Bucky were killed in action. The reveal of the Winter Soldier later on to Captain America. Now we really start to see how this really affects him personally, because as he even admits to Sharon when, you know, he's first reeling for the idea that Bucky's alive, but he's also this brainwashed KGB assassin known as the Winter Soldier who's been committing, you know, assassinations over the past 50 years purely because of the fact that what they've been doing in between missions is they've been, obviously, essentially, when the Russians found him after he'd been stuck in the ice for so long, they seemingly got him out and thawed him, but then what they also did was they gave Bucky a replacement metal arm, but at the same time they also brainwashed him into becoming an agent for the KGB and seemingly becoming this cold-hearted, you know, Russian assassin that they would use periodically throughout history to commit certain, obviously, assassinations on certain targets, whether it be, you know, officials of certain states, or whether it be captains of industry, or whether it just be they wanted people just out of the way in general. And how they were able to keep him alive for so long and why he didn't age was because in between missions they'd obviously wipe his memory, but then they also put him back under stasis, so that was why he was able to remain so young for the past 50 years and not really age more than 5 years, which was really, really cool and really quite simple, but also really quite brilliant in terms of how Ed Brubaker was managing to fill in the blanks as to what happened to him, but also how they managed to introduce him into the modern society as pretty much a ghost story nobody ever really heard of outside of the intelligence agency, but then, you know, they would never find him because obviously they'd put him straight back into stasis after his mission was complete, which was really cool and really interesting. But like I said, we also start to see Cap admit that, yeah, Bucky was his partner and his fellow, war buddy, but he was also his friend, and he cannot accept the fact that Bucky's alive, at least not initially. We see throughout the course of the story, Cap obviously goes through the 5 stages of grief once he learns Bucky is actually alive and well, but he's actually, as I said, this brainwashed KGB assassin. He goes through, obviously, denial and isolation, and then, you know, he seemingly goes through the other stages, which are anger, bargaining, devastation, or depression, sorry, and then seemingly accepting the fact that Bucky is alive and well, even if he is this, as I said, this cold, calculating, brainwashed KGB assassin. Like I said, this is my first exposure to Captain America in the comics, at least, and this is just really, really fascinating. It's really engaging and it's really, really engrossing, not only from a story standpoint, but also from a, like I said, it's a multi-fascinated and multi sort of genre spanning story, if you will. On the one hand, it's, like I said, it's a murder mystery, it's a spy espionage story or a spy thriller, it's a character examination and a character deconstruction of Captain America. Like I said, my expectations for this were somewhat coloured because I'd obviously seen the film of The Winter Soldier with, directed by Anthony and Joe Russo, with Chris Evans as Cap, Sebastian Shaw as Bucky, Scarlett Johansson as, the Black Widow, as well as Anthony Mackie as Falcon, or Sam Wilson. Among others. So I thought the film was fantastic, but reading this and then going back and watching the film, it's really interesting and really cool to see how well and how faithful they've been to this source material. Overall, this is an absolutely fantastic volume. Like I said, the overall story is fantastic, as well as the writing and the storytelling by Ed Brubaker, coupled with the equally fantastic artwork of Steve Epting and Michael Lark, as well as Mike Perkins and John Paul Leon, as well as Frank D'Amato on the colours. If you're a fan of Captain America, or if you're like me and you never really read Captain America and you really want to read the character from a comic book standpoint, I cannot recommend this first volume of Ed Brubaker's Captain America run highly enough. Thank you everybody for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all enjoyed. By all means, as always, feel free to rate the video up or down. Leave a comment below letting me know what you think of the volume, if you've read it or if you're going to pick it up and read it. Also, let me know your thoughts on Captain America's run. I keep getting this sentence mixed up. This is my third attempt at doing this video. Let me know what you think of Captain America by Ed Brubaker as a whole, or Ed Brubaker's run on Cap in its entirety. Finally, managed to get that sentence out without tripping over my own words. Ugh. So, like I said, absolutely fantastic stuff, cannot recommend it highly enough. Please stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for more future content. I will be reviewing the rest of Ed Brubaker's run on Cap in its entirety, as well as many, many other series and particular runs of characters and creators, etc. So, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I have been your host, Gambit896, signing off, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.